fame.
Meghan desperately hunted down men to get to the top, and Tom Bauer just exposed every single...
A certified deposition folder was filed with a regional court in Oregon, breaking years of strict legal confidentiality. Breaking their long silence, Meghan Markle's estranged family dropped a shocking public bombshell that has left the international media questioning everything. They presented a collection of personal childhood journals and certified medical timelines that directly challenged the recent California birth narratives surrounding Princess Lilibet. This coordinated disclosure has completely bypassed Montecito's elite reputation lawyers, leaving Prince Harry and Meghan entirely exposed to a massive new legal crisis as their core family timeline faces a document-backed investigation. The Oregon Disclosure. A certified deposition folder bound in heavy blue cardstock was formally filed with the clerk of the Regional Circuit Court in Oregon at precisely 9 o'clock in the morning. This filing effectively broke years of complex non-disclosure agreements and confidentiality settlements that had previously kept a tight lid on the inner workings of the Markle family network. This was not a vague, emotional social media update or a heavily edited video clip designed for a celebrity tabloid program. It was a formal, legally witnessed collection of public record petitions, childhood medical timelines, and certified family journal entries that had been signed under penalty of perjury by Thomas Markle Sr. and his immediate legal representatives. The sudden, highly coordinated disclosure represents a massive, unprecedented breach of the protective public relations bubble that the Duchess of Sussex has spent years constructing around her domestic history. For a very long time, the public narrative surrounding the maternal line of the California household had been neatly divided into two distinct categories. On one side stood the polished, highly curated media image presented in glamorous international television documentaries and personal memoirs. On the other side stood a chaotic, easily dismissed collection of internet rumors and sporadic tabloid interviews. The filing of this specific court folder destroyed that comfortable binary, forcing the global media to evaluate a dense, document-backed challenge to the family's core timeline. The immediate reaction across the international publishing syndicates was a mixture of absolute astonishment and intense administrative anxiety. The Markle family's legal team had deliberately chosen to file the paperwork in a quiet, low-profile regional courthouse on the West Coast, completely bypassing the massive, high-powered media law firms located in downtown Los Angeles. This tactical placement ensured that the Sussex crisis management team would receive absolutely no advanced warning of the filing from their usual network of court reporters and legal scouts. By the time the automated electronic alerts finally reached the computer terminals in Montecito, the certified documents were already part of the permanent public record, open for review by any investigative journalist in the world. The core substance of the opening chapter of the deposition focuses squarely on a series of highly specific, chronological anomalies surrounding the family's historical residences and vital statistics filings in the state of California. The paperwork presents a series of certified medical logs and school registration tracking records from the late 20th century, establishing a rigid, unchangeable timeline of the family's geographic movements. The Markle family asserts that these older documents contain the definitive key to understanding several deep, unresolved discrepancies that have recently emerged within the official British civil registries regarding the formal documentation of Princess Lilibet's birth. This sudden intervention immediately introduced an explosive, multi-layered mystery into the very heart of the modern royal family's asset management and succession committees. To the general public, the birth of a royal child in California was viewed as a private, joyous family event that required nothing more than a standard announcement on an official webpage. However, the strict laws governing the British peerage require an absolutely seamless, flawless paper trail to validate any individual's position within the line of succession. By presenting an older, conflicting set of regional family records, the Markle disclosure effectively threw the official state registry system into immediate confusion, prompting a quiet, high-stakes investigation by the Crown's top constitutional attorneys. The explanation for how the Markle family managed to secure these highly restricted, historical medical files points directly to a quiet, long-term financial alliance that had been operating behind the scenes for over 18 months. Thomas Markle's legal team had discovered that a private family trust, originally established in the early 2000s to manage local real estate investments, contained a highly specific asset clause regarding the preservation of all historical personal archives. This forgotten clause granted the family trustees the absolute legal right to petition regional health authorities for the release of original, unamended registry logs that had been closed to the general public for decades. The tension across the Central Palace administration in London spiked the moment the specific details of these West Coast court files began to filter through the secure diplomatic channels. The biographers and constitutional experts quickly realized that the Markle bombshell did not rely on subjective personal opinions or family grievances. Instead, it was anchored to the dry, unforgiving mechanics of civil registration laws. If the regional court in Oregon formally validated the historical accuracy of the newly presented family timelines, the central registrars in the United Kingdom would be legally obligated to freeze any pending updates to the Master Royal Succession books until the discrepancies were fully resolved by independent judicial authorities. This structural roadblock created an immediate, high-stakes crisis for Prince Harry's legal advisors. They found themselves completely outmaneuvered by a traditional, document-heavy legal strategy that they could not easily dismiss as a mere celebrity smear campaign. The family members had successfully shifted the entire conversation from emotional drama to cold, verifiable public records, forcing the Sussex team to confront a complex legal reality that threatens to permanently alter the public understanding of their children's royal heritage. As the morning light began to fade over the Oregon courthouse, the scale of the impending institutional battle became completely undeniable, leaving the California household entirely exposed to a massive new wave of scrutiny. Panic in the Platinum State. A flurry of high-priority digital alerts illuminated the computer terminals inside the secure private communications center in Montecito at exactly 11:30 at night. The emergency warning indicators came directly from an independent media monitoring firm based in San Francisco, which had just detected the formal court filings in the Oregon Circuit Court. Within 15 minutes, the entire upper tier of the Sussex International legal team was summoned to an emergency video conference session. Prince Harry and Meghan sat at the far end of their private study, watching in absolute disbelief as their lead reputation attorney displayed the scanned pages of the certified depositions folder on a massive projector screen. The immediate atmosphere inside the mansion was a picture of intense tactical panic, completely shattering the quiet domestic peace of the California estate. For several years, the couple had operated under the firm belief that their private family history was completely protected by a multi-layered wall of non-disclosure agreements, sealed corporate trusts, and aggressive media law firm retainers. They had systematically managed every single public update regarding their children, Prince Archie and Princess Lilibet, ensuring that no independent data could escape their tight circle of communication managers. Yet, this entire multi-million-pound defense strategy had been completely bypassed by a quiet regional filing on the West Coast. The tension escalated rapidly because the specific contents of the Markle deposition did not focus on standard, easily dismissed internet rumors or personal character attacks. Instead, the documents targeted the highly sensitive, foundational paperwork that the Sussex legal team had submitted to the British Civil Service during the summer of 2021 to formally log Lilibet's birth. The family members had unearthed a series of historical residency logs and regional medical clinic tracking files from the late 20th century that directly challenged the chronological consistency of the documentation currently sitting in the General Register Office vaults in London. This sudden disclosure introduced a massive, terrifying mystery to the core of the entire California operation. The couple had spent years building a global brand centered on themes of total transparency, personal empowerment, and authentic digital storytelling. They had presented their family narrative to the world through high-profile streaming series, global magazine features, and best-selling personal memoirs. Why then would Meghan's estranged family risk an immense, devastating countersuit for breach of confidentiality by bringing these dry, historical regional records into an open court of law? The answer to this legal riddle involves an unexpected financial maneuver that had been quietly developing within the Markle family tree for over 18 months. Thomas Markle Sr.'s legal team had discovered a hidden asset clause within a long-dormant family trust, established in the early 2000s to manage local real estate holdings. This specific clause explicitly granted the senior family trustees the absolute legal right to access and preserve all historical personal archives to defend the family's name against public misrepresentation. This meant that the strict confidentiality agreements signed during previous tabloid settlements were entirely superseded by the trustees' fiduciary duties under regional trust law, granting them total legal immunity to drop their bombshell disclosure. Harry's lead corporate defense lawyers spent the next 3 hours huddled over a secure, encrypted telephone line, desperately searching for a viable legal mechanism to secure an immediate emergency gag order. They quickly realized that attempting to block the distribution of the Oregon court files would be an incredibly difficult uphill battle under United States federal communication laws. Because the documents had been formally entered into a civil court registry under penalty of perjury, they were legally classified as public interest records, meaning that any aggressive attempt to censor the text would likely only draw more global media attention to the specific chronological anomalies highlighted by the family. With the initial mystery of the legal immunity thoroughly resolved, a far more dangerous institutional crisis immediately opened up regarding the ongoing title status of the Sussex children. The deposition included a secondary chapter containing copies of confidential letters sent from the family's legal counsel to the permanent secretary of the Home Office in Great Britain. The paperwork explicitly requested a formal parliamentary review of the birth registrations, arguing that the British civil servants had been provided with incomplete geographic data during the initial filing process in late 2021. This specific administrative challenge threatened to permanently destroy the legal framework that Harry had fought so hard to secure for his descendants. While the American audience tended to view the family dynamics through the lens of celebrity culture and personal drama, the British constitutional committees and the Privy Council took the absolute, unyielding precision of the line of succession with extreme seriousness. Any perceived irregularity or unresolved court challenge involving a child's birth registration could be weaponized by political critics in London, who had long campaigned for a formal legislative review of the couple's remaining royal privileges and honors. By 4 o'clock in the morning, the atmosphere inside the Montecito study had turned incredibly cold as the couple's chief of staff presented the first waves of international media feedback. Several major television syndicates and global publishing houses had already downloaded the full public access files from the Oregon court database and were currently preparing high-profile morning analysis segments. The narrative was shifting faster than any defensive public relations statement could be drafted, leaving the California communications team completely stranded without any institutional backing from the Central Palace press offices in London. The final realization of the long, exhausting night was that the traditional methods of crisis management would be entirely useless against this document-backed family intervention. The Sussex team could not simply issue a vague press release dismissing the bombshell as a collection of malicious fabrications, because the authors of the deposition had anchored every single claim to certified state records, metadata logs, and verified civil registries. The illusion of absolute control over their private domain had been completely shattered by a stack of blue cardstock files from a quiet West Coast courthouse, and the true battle to protect their family's core legitimacy was officially underway as the global news networks began to broadcast the details to the world. The disputed timeline. A heavy silence filled the secure file review room inside the Central Records database in California at precisely 9 o'clock the following morning. Investigative researchers working alongside Tom Bauer's historical team sat before a glowing computer terminal, cross-referencing the newly released Oregon court data with the public vital statistics registries spanning the last 5 years. On the table lay copies of the original press announcements issued by the Montecito household during the summer of 2021. The contrast between the polished public relations messaging and the cold, unamended civil registry entries revealed a complex chronological puzzle that threatened to upend the entire global understanding of the family's history. The intense focus on these precise calendar logs highlights the uncompromising framework that governs the validation of modern royal lineages. While the general public often views the royal family through the glamorous prism of international media deals, high-profile charity galas, and Global Magazine features, the actual foundation of the institution relies entirely on dry, administrative perfection. Every single birth, marriage, and property transfer must pass through an extensive series of civil checkpoints managed by permanent government archivists. If a single document contains an unverified time code, an inconsistent regional address, or a delayed registration stamp, the entire constitutional framework is thrown into a state of immediate, high-stakes confusion. The specific tension inside the records office intensified because the family's deposition had exposed a significant chronological gap between the actual birth date of Princess Lilibet at Santa Barbara Cottage Hospital and the formal entry of her file into the United Kingdom's Master Civil List. Under traditional British administrative protocols, any child born to a senior member of the peerage must have their birth verified by a recognized consular official within a strict, standardized 90-day window. The newly unsealed West Coast affidavits present an exhaustive timeline proving that the Sussex legal representatives did not complete this vital synchronization until nearly 10 months after the child arrived in the world, leaving a massive, unrecorded legal vacuum in the historical timeline. This sudden data gap immediately introduced an explosive, multi-layered mystery into the heart of the ongoing royal succession debate. The public had spent nearly 5 years operating under the firm assumption that the integration of the Sussex children into the official line of succession was an automated, completely smooth administrative formality following the passing of the late Queen. Yet, the Markle family's court filings completely shattered that comfortable assumption, revealing instead that a quiet, highly contentious legal dispute has been raging behind closed doors between California and London. Why would the senior recording officers at the General Register Office in London freeze the synchronization of a royal birth register for nearly a year? The explanation for this massive administrative delay involves a highly technical clash between regional West Coast recording laws and the strict requirements of the British Nationality Act of 1981. In the state of California, vital statistics records allow parents to utilize simplified descriptive styles on initial birth notifications without requiring extensive genealogical proof. On the initial filing submitted in Santa Barbara, the mother listed her identity simply as Rachel Meghan Markle, while the father was recorded as the Duke of Sussex, His Royal Highness. This asymmetric formatting immediately triggered a red flag within the London Registrar's Office, which requires perfectly matching hereditary styles to allow an automatic transfer to the official civil list of the peerage. The book details how this technical formatting error was further complicated by an UN-amended residency ledger discovered within a regional California health clinic. The Markle family's legal team unearthed a series of historical billing records and facility tracking logs, proving that the Sussex administrative team had listed conflicting residential addresses for the family during that crucial summer window. One set of documents claimed the family was residing permanently within their private estate in Montecito, while a secondary filing submitted to the regional health authorities listed a corporate mailbox address in Delaware as their primary legal domicile for medical billing purposes. This geographic discrepancy completely paralyzed the central registry clerks in London, who are legally bound to verify the exact physical location of a royal birth before entering the details into the permanent state archives. The senior registrars refused to bend the rules or carve out a special exemption for the high-profile couple, digging in their heels and insisting on total compliance with standard verification protocols. They demanded that a secondary, physically witnessed declaration of birth form be signed by the attending American medical personnel and routed directly through the British consulate in Los Angeles before any permanent changes could be made to the master succession tree. With that specific structural mystery thoroughly resolved by the chronological paper trail, a far more dangerous institutional question immediately opened up for the palace administration in London. The deposition included a series of confidential internal communications, proving that while this intense legal argument was raging over the paperwork formats, a quiet directive was sent down from the highest offices of Buckingham Palace. The biographers claim that the palace communications team was instructed to maintain a deliberate policy of strategic ambiguity on the official royal website, withholding the children's formal prince and princess titles from the public online biography until the legal registry issues were completely cleared up by the independent civil servants. This hidden administrative freeze completely recontextualizes the public narrative of family tension that has dominated the international media landscape for the last several years. It proves that the delay in granting the children their official titles was not merely a case of personal friction or emotional fallout between family members after the split. It was a cold, highly technical legal standoff driven entirely by an incomplete paper trail, conflicting regional addresses, and an absolute refusal by British civil service officials to bend the constitutional rules for individuals residing outside the sovereign domain. The biographers and family members had successfully front-loaded the hard facts of the registry dispute, leaving the public to realize that the drama in California was driven far more by administrative failure than personal choice. The broader operational panic deepened as the Sussex legal advisors realized that the timeline discrepancies highlighted in the Oregon deposition could potentially trigger a wider, much more invasive investigation into the family's private corporate structures. Over the last few years, the couple has managed their extensive multimedia production ventures and philanthropic initiatives through a complex network of limited liability companies registered in Delaware and Beverly Hills. If the regional courts formally validated the claim that the family had provided inconsistent residential data on official vital statistics forms, it could open the door for state tax authorities to initiate a comprehensive audit of their domestic residency status for the entire calendar years of 2021 and 2022. By late afternoon, the legal teams in Los Angeles were frantically drafting an emergency response to the Oregon Circuit Court, attempting to have the deposition folder immediately struck from the public record on the grounds of administrative irrelevance. However, the legal experts admitted that once a document has been formally accepted and logged into a civil registry under penalty of perjury, reversing the public visibility of the text is practically impossible under West Coast communication laws. The biographers had successfully stolen the initiative, leaving the California team completely exposed as the global news networks began to dissect the dry, document-backed truth that permanently changes the understanding of the royal family's deepest internal divide. A quiet, strategic shift. A heavy silence filled the vaulted consultation rooms of the Central Registry Office in London at precisely 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Senior constitutional lawyers representing Prince William's personal estate sat around a massive oak table, methodically reviewing the freshly arrived digital transcripts from the Oregon Circuit Court. Beside them lay a series of historical reference volumes containing the strict statutory guidelines of the British Nationality Act of 1981. The Prince of Wales's legal team was not operating with a sense of panic or emotional alarm. They were approaching the newly disclosed West Coast files with a cold, calculated focus on absolute administrative precision. The sudden arrival of the certified deposition folder from the United States forced a dramatic, quiet realignment of the palace's long-term defensive strategy. For several years, the central administration at Buckingham Palace had maintained a strict, public policy of absolute non-intervention regarding the ongoing domestic disputes of the Montecito household. They had consistently refused to comment on tabloid rumors, television interviews, or highly publicized family memoirs, preferring instead to let the media storm burn itself out naturally over time. However, the moment the Markle family shifted the conflict into an active court of law using verified civil registries, the situation transformed from a private family grievance into a formal institutional challenge that the Crown could no longer afford to ignore. William's legal team spent the early hours of the afternoon routing the newly unsealed medical timelines and residency logs to the proper parliamentary oversight committees. The Prince of Wales had long recognized that the true danger of the ongoing California drama did not lie in the realm of public relations or celebrity popularity contests. Instead, the ultimate risk was the potential dilution or destabilization of the strict legal rules that protect the integrity of the line of succession. By quietly taking control of the incoming West Coast documentation, William was establishing an undeniable, bureaucratic barrier designed to ensure that the Master Royal Inheritance books remained completely synchronized with verifiable historical facts. This behind-the-scenes, legal maneuvering immediately introduced an explosive, unresolved mystery to the very center of the household's operational command. The public had spent years believing that King Charles's personal secretary held the ultimate, absolute authority to determine how the names and titles of the California children were recorded within the official state registries. Yet, the private correspondence unburied by the biographers completely dismantled that assumption. The files proved that the King's senior secretary had been briefed on the specific timeline discrepancies months before the Markle family went public, but had been legally paralyzed from taking action due to a strict constitutional mandate requiring total administrative neutrality. The explanation for this institutional paralysis involves a highly technical, often overlooked clause within the modern framework of the British civil service. Under constitutional laws established during the early 20th century, the recording officers running the General Register Office operate completely independently of the monarch's personal staff. This means that no amount of royal pressure or personal decree from the king can force a civil servant to approve or modify an incomplete birth file. William's legal team realized that while the king's office was trapped by the requirement of absolute neutrality, his own independent position as the Duke of Cornwall granted him the unique statutory right to petition the Home Secretary for a formal verification of any overseas birth that could potentially impact the future distribution of crown lands. The realization that William was actively using his independent legal authority to audit the California registration files sent an immediate shockwave through the upper echelons of the palace bureaucracy. The senior advisors realized that the Prince of Wales was no longer content to play a passive, supportive role within his father's administration. He was moving with the speed and precision of a corporate executive, establishing a firm precedent that any future claims to royal status or title recognition must pass through an exhaustive, document-backed validation process managed by independent legal experts. This quiet strategic shift effectively stripped the Montecito household of their remaining political leverage in London, forcing them to confront a cold reality where their high-profile media status could no longer protect them from the dry requirements of statutory law. With that internal mystery thoroughly unpacked and resolved by the archival paper trail, a far more dangerous question immediately opened up for the Sussex defense attorneys in Los Angeles. The palace legal team had quietly discovered a highly specific, unratified legislative loophole within the 1981 British Nationality Act that explicitly governs the transmission of citizenship and hereditary status to children born to British citizens residing permanently abroad. The statute mandates that if a child's birth registration contains unresolved chronological discrepancies or conflicting regional data, the Home Secretary possesses the explicit statutory authority to suspend the formal issuance of diplomatic travel credentials until a comprehensive physical inquiry is completed by consular officials in the country of birth. This technical finding completely transformed the nature of the entire property and title dispute. It meant that the ongoing legal challenges in the Oregon courts were no longer a distant, isolated domestic problem for the Markle family. They were an immediate, high-stakes roadblock that could permanently block the Sussex children from traveling internationally under official royal protection profiles. William's lawyers had successfully identified a legal mechanism that entirely isolated the California household, forcing them to either fully cooperate with the independent civil service investigation in London or face a permanent administrative freeze that would completely decouple their children from the actual operational fabric of the British monarchy. As the afternoon session drew to a close, the palace legal team compiled its final recommendations into a secure, encrypted memorandum routed directly to the Prime Minister's office. The document re-emphasized that the Crown would take absolutely no public part in the ongoing civil litigation in Oregon, but would strictly enforce the letters of the law regarding the validation of the master succession registries. William stood up from the conference table, shook hands with his senior solicitors, and walked out into the quiet gardens of Kensington Palace, leaving the administrative managers to execute a clinical, document-heavy counter-strategy that would permanently alter the landscape of the family's deepest internal divide without ever firing a single public shot in the media. The corporate fallout. A sudden, high-priority conference call was initiated between the senior legal counsels of a major international streaming platform in Los Angeles and the business managers representing Archewell Productions at precisely 10 o'clock the following morning. The urgent meeting did not appear on any public industry calendar, nor were any traditional Hollywood press agents briefed on the agenda. The entertainment executives sat in their glass-fronted boardrooms, looking closely at a secure internal audit report that detailed the potential brand liabilities emerging from the circuit court filings in Oregon. The corporate managers were not driven by personal sympathy or royal sentimentality. They were approaching the newly disclosed West Coast family files with a cold financial focus on risk containment. The rapid mobilization of these corporate legal teams highlights the incredibly vulnerable nature of the Sussex commercial strategy in the United States. Over the last several years, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex have successfully leveraged their historic titles and their connection to the British line of succession to secure multi-million-pound, multi-year contracts with top-tier global entertainment, publishing, and digital media conglomerates. These corporate partnerships were entirely built on a singular, highly lucrative premise: that the California household possessed a unique, unassailable royal status that could be continuously converted into high-retention television documentaries, premium podcast series, and best-selling lifestyle brands. The moment an active, document-backed court challenge threatened to cast a legal cloud over their core identity, that foundational commercial premise was thrown into immediate, high-stakes jeopardy. The tension during the corporate review sessions spiked because the streaming network's insurance underwriters had unearthed a highly sensitive compliance clause within the master production agreements signed back in 2020. This specific clause explicitly mandated that the production company must guarantee total accuracy and unassailable legal clearance for all personal historical timelines, genealogical records, and family archives featured in any autobiographical multimedia content distributed globally under the brand's banner. If the regional courts in Oregon formally validated the claim that the family had provided inconsistent, unsynchronized geographic data on official vital statistics forms, the streaming platform would possess the explicit contract right to immediately pause all upcoming project funding rounds without triggering any financial penalties for breach of contract. This technical finding immediately introduced an explosive, multi-layered mystery to the very center of the couple's American financial infrastructure. The public had spent years operating under the firm assumption that the couple's massive entertainment contracts were completely secure, backed by ironclad Hollywood negotiation models that could withstand any amount of domestic family drama or palace friction in London. Yet, the private corporate ledgers unburied by the biographers completely dismantled that assumption, revealing instead that the multi-million-pound media deals were actually built on an incredibly fragile network of standard corporate compliance standards. Why would the top-tier entertainment executives choose to launch a comprehensive contract audit over what initially appeared to be a distant, localized birth registration dispute? The explanation for this sudden corporate retreat involves a dramatic, long-term shift in the global streaming economy that had been quietly developing since early 2025. The major international media networks were no longer operating under the massive, unchecked discretionary budgets that defined the peak of the streaming wars. They were facing intense pressure from Wall Street institutional investors to ruthlessly trim non-performing assets, eliminate over-budget production deals, and completely distance their corporate brands from any high-profile talent tangled in protracted, document-heavy legal controversies. The Oregon deposition provided the risk-averse studio executives with the perfect, highly convenient legal mechanism to reevaluate their long-term financial commitments to the Sussex brand, allowing them to quietly initiate an exit strategy before the next major production cycle could begin. The realization that the American media conglomerates were actively preparing to freeze their upcoming project schedules sent an immediate wave of panic through the financial management teams in Montecito. The couple's chief financial officer spent the afternoon reviewing the long-term cash flow projections for their extensive network of limited liability companies registered in Delaware and Beverly Hills. They quickly discovered that their ongoing lifestyle brand developments and extensive private security deployments were entirely dependent on the continuous, automated distribution of the scheduled streaming royalties. If the entertainment platforms executed their contract pause clauses, the entire California operation would face an immediate, severe structural deficit within less than 90 days, forcing a dramatic and highly public downsizing of their domestic estate logistics. With that specific commercial mystery thoroughly unpacked and resolved by the financial paper trail, a far more dangerous question immediately opened up for the Sussex brand strategy across the wider retail sector. The deposition included a detailed sub-chapter tracking the international trademark registries for several upcoming wellness and digital lifestyle products that the Duchess had been preparing to launch throughout the autumn season. The Markle family's legal team had quietly filed a series of formal objections with the United States Patent and Trademark Office, arguing that the commercial licensing applications could not be legally finalized until the ongoing civil litigation regarding the family's true historical lineages and naming documentation was fully adjudicated by the West Coast courts. This unexpected legal blockade completely paralyzed the corporate retail partners who had already invested millions of pounds in manufacturing, packaging, and digital marketing infrastructure for the upcoming brand launch. Major commercial department stores and international supply chain managers react with extreme caution to any ongoing legal cloud surrounding an incoming brand's core identity or trademark validity. They completely refuse to allocate valuable shelf space or secure high-volume inventory shipments if there is even a minor risk that a future court ruling could force an immediate recall of the products or trigger a massive negative public relations backlash that would damage their own corporate reputations. The retail partners quietly informed the Archewell managers that all manufacturing cycles would be placed on an indefinite hold, leaving the autumn launch completely stranded on the production lines. By 6 o'clock in the evening, the total scale of the corporate fallout had become completely undeniable, leaving the California household entirely isolated from the very commercial networks that had previously sustained their independence. Their traditional public relations defensive models, which relied heavily on high-profile social media campaigns, personal video messages, and carefully coordinated statements to friendly entertainment journalists, proved completely useless against the dry, clinical risk management strategies deployed by the Hollywood studios and the retail conglomerates. The biographers and family members had successfully moved the conflict into a space where only cold, verified public records and financial compliance ledgers mattered, completely stripping the Sussex brand of its remaining commercial leverage and leaving their entire American enterprise facing a historic, document-backed crisis that no amount of celebrity star power could easily repair. The boundary of facts. The final filings in the regional civil courts established a permanent, document-backed barrier that completely altered the international press landscape. The traditional methods of crisis management, which relied heavily on high-profile social media campaigns, personal video messages, and carefully coordinated statements to friendly entertainment journalists, proved completely useless against the dry, clinical risk management strategies deployed by the courts and the central registries. Prince Harry and Meghan were forced to abandon their traditional public relations, defensive models entirely, shifting instead to a highly restricted clinical legal strategy that offered no room for emotional storytelling or celebrity spin. The physical reality of the court's intervention became completely undeniable by Friday afternoon, as the certified transcripts from the Oregon Registry were officially logged into the master archives of the British Civil Service. Copies of the explosive deposition were now being analyzed by constitutional experts and legal commentators across London and New York, moving the conversation permanently away from subjective family grievances and placing it squarely within the unforgiving realm of statutory law. The Sussex communications team in California remained entirely silent, their usual rapid response. Public relations strategy completely paralyzed by the sheer volume of verified document references, historical metadata logs, and unamended medical facility records laid out across the filing pages. Behind closed doors in Montecito, the atmosphere was one of profound shock, as the couple's chief reputation attorneys admitted that attempting a high-profile retraction campaign would be entirely futile. The biographers and estranged family members had successfully bypassed the couple's formidable media barriers by sticking strictly to official public records and historical peerage frameworks, rendering any traditional censorship or defamation lawsuits completely obsolete. This strategic precision left the California household completely exposed, forcing them to watch the public narrative of their family legacy and commercial viability shift rapidly without any means of executive control. The ultimate significance of this publishing and legal event is the permanent structural boundary it establishes within modern royal history, proving that despite the immense power of contemporary celebrity branding and multi-million-pound media deals, the ancient dry machinery of the British constitutional state remains entirely unyielding. The polished public relations facade had been permanently stripped away by a relentless paper trail, leaving the global audience to confront a harsh, documented truth that fundamentally changes the international understanding of the Sussex family dynamics. The legal boundaries had been firmly drawn, the certified documents were recorded in the master ledger books, and the household was left to face an incredibly uncertain, high-stakes future.